Well, we want him to confirm what we already know from hard evidence, that he and his wife were part of a conspiracy to, in fact, create this narrative of involvement and wrongdoing by the president relative to the Russians. So we have a lot of evidence. Now the question is, can we get him to confirm the evidence, or will he deny the truth right before us in writing?
Republican Congressman Darrell Issa yesterday putting DOJ official Bruce Orr on notice on this program as he gears up to testify before a closed-door session of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Orr arriving in this picture, as you can see here, just moments ago on Capitol Hill. Republican Congressman Mark Meadows of North Carolina is also a member of the Oversight Committee and the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Good morning to you, Congressman. I am sure that this is a moment many of you have been anticipating for quite some time. What do you plan to ask him?
Well, we have, Sarah, and I think that there are three different lines of questioning. One, Congressman Issa talked about it. Will Bruce Orr verify what we already know? One of the interesting things is that we have evidence that would suggest that FBI informants were told that there was no collusion, and yet it seemed to be ignored. So we're going to ask Bruce Orr about that. Additionally, when you have Christopher Steele and Nellie Orr being paid tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars to put forth a false dossier, why would they rely so much on those two witnesses and ignore others? So there's about 60 plus questions that I have. Hopefully we'll get some truth, be able to report back to you. But, you know, we're looking to honestly have a full day of questioning here.
Well, your colleague Jim Jordan just walked in a few moments ago and he tweeted this out. Orr's wife worked for him, hired by Clinton to produce the dossier. Orr passed the dossier to FBI. FBI used salacious and unverified dossier to spy on the president's campaign. Who all knew about this at the DOJ? Congressman, I think a lot of the American people who are watching and looking on at this moment are wondering if we're actually going to get any answers, if you're going to get any answers today.
Well, we're going to get some answers today, but I can tell you in continuing to drill down, it's really your viewers, the American people, that need to be the judges of this. I believe that we need to have complete transparency, take some of the documents that we've been able to see, declassify them, allow the American people to see it. And when they see it, they will be appalled at what happened within our FBI and DOJ. It should never happen in a constitutional republic.
You also tweeted this. We've learned new information suggesting our suspicions are true. FBI, DOJ have previously leaked info to the press and then used those same press stories as a separate source to justify FISA's unreal. Tomorrow's Bruce Orr interview is even more critical. Did he ever do this? What do you think the answer to that question is?
Well, I believe they did. We know that some people at the Department of Justice and FBI actually gave information to the media. Then the stories were reported. Then they used those reports to justify further investigations. You know, that's like saying, well, we're going to incriminate on one hand and be the jury on the other. It just doesn't work that way. So we believe that we'll get some clarity on that today. We have some hard evidence that will be hard to refute.
What's at stake here?
You know, I think our republic and the integrity of the FBI and DOJ is at stake, Sarah. When we really look at it, 99% of the DOJ and FBI workers are truly great patriots. And yet we have about 7 or 8 that took things into their own hand. And so it's the credibility of really Lady Justice that should have a blindfold. And yet we're seeing that they were peaking and trying to tilt justice one way or another based on their own political bias.
Do you think we'll learn anything today? Obviously, this is closed door. Gets underway shortly here. You expect, as you just said, it to last hours, go for a pretty long day here. Will we learn anything today that comes out of this closed door interview?
You know, generally a lot of the specifics on these closed-door interviews does not get shared in the media. It allows for further investigation, that goes on. But I do believe that we'll learn, in general terms, some of the other areas of concern. And so I think that later reporting today would suggest that perhaps the involvement, who authorized Bruce Orr to get involved, if there was someone who did that, those are the critical questions that have to be answered.
All right. Well, Congressman Mark Meadows, you've got a big day ahead of you. Thank you for coming on ahead of that big interview today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right.
In the last few minutes, we've kind of had a rolling thunder situation. We've had a number of the Republican lawmakers arrive here on Capitol Hill. And within the last 10 minutes, the Justice Department official Bruce Ohr has also arrived. He appeared to be with two other officials from the Justice Department. And from a distance, Fox News shouted a series of questions, and Ohr did not respond. Let's listen.
Mr. Ohr, who authorized your contact with the FBI? Mr. Ohr, were you acting alone, or did you have authority from a Justice Department official? How did your wife benefit from the dossier contract? Did you have a conflict of interest? Mr. Ohr, will you take our questions?
Bruce Ohr worked at the Justice Department in the fall of 2016, and his portfolio was narcotics and gangs. It was not Russia. But testimony, as well as emails and text messages, show that Bruce Ohr was part of a back-channel communication. Stand by just 1 second. We've got Congressman Jordan, who has just arrived here. Let's just drop in for a second. Congressman Jordan, what are you expecting to learn from Bruce Ohr today? Congressman Jordan?
I don't know if it's improper, but I want to know who at DOJ knew. And certainly it looks like he continued to meet with Mr. Steele after the FBI had terminated their relationship with Mr. Steele.
Did Mr. Ohr break the law when he took actions that financially benefited his wife, Nellie Ohr, who worked for Fusion GPS?
Oh, I don't know, but the fundamentals don't change. The fact that top Department of Justice official's wife is working for the firm the Clintons hired to put together the dossier, and then the FBI uses the dossier that they're getting from Bruce Ohr. Peter Strzok told us that, to then go get the warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. So that's a big concern. Who at DOJ knew that? Did Sally Yates know what was going on? I mean, I don't know. So we got lots of questions for him.
Right, thank you, Congressman. Okay, so that's just live on the fly with Congressman Jim Jordan. He's one of 4 Republicans who will be asking questions along with staffers today. Again, the main point is that Bruce Ohr acted as a back channel with the former British spy Christopher Steele, who was the author of the dossier, and that contact continued with the FBI in the fall of 2016, even after the FBI had fired Steele for cause because he had lied about his contacts with the media, and in those contacts, he had been briefing the dossier, Eric.
Way to go, Catherine. That is real journalism live here on the Fox News channel. And those pointed questions that you were shouting at Mr. Ohr, he refused to answer. We'll see if he also refuses to answer it, if he takes the 5th, or if those 2 other Justice Department officials, if they are lawyers, who counsel him not to say anything. We'll see what happens at the hearing, although it is behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Ohr's wife, Nellie, was a contractor for Fusion GPS. Will they be hearing from her at any point, and how does she fit into all of this?
Well, I don't want to give you bad information because I haven't had any indication yet that Nellie Ohr will be called to testify and will appear. But the important thing for folks at home is that Bruce Ohr's wife worked for the group that put the dossier together, and she did research that was part of the dossier. And the set of questions I just put to Congressman Jordan is whether Bruce Ohr may have a violation of federal law here, because government officials are not allowed to take actions in their official capacity that financially benefit members of their family. And Nellie Ohr was receiving what I understand to be a significant income from the firm Fusion GPS that was behind the dossier. So that's another important issue to watch here.
And certainly a lot of questions about those reported 60 contacts between Mr. Ohr and Christopher Steele, as well as meeting him.
And if I could just say one more thing, it's more than just the contacts with Christopher Steele and the FBI. What the text messages obtained in review by Fox News show is that Christopher Steele, the British spy, tried to use Bruce Ohr as his go-between with the special counsel and Robert Mueller. So this kind of back-channel communication really continued long after Director Comey was fired in 2017.
And after Steele was dumped by the FBI for violating regulations.
Correct.
Of course. All right, Catherine, we'll get you back to the hearing.
That's right.
And see what happens when we get any other comments. Thank you.
All right, senior Justice Department official Bruce Ohr is headed for a heated hearing on Capitol Hill after President Trump slams his, quote, disgraceful connection to the Steele dossier.
I think that Bruce Ohr is a disgrace with his wife, Nellie. For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace.
So what questions does Orr need to answer today? Here now to weigh in as commentary writer at the Washington Times, Philip Wegman. Thank you for joining us this morning. Philip, I know you say there are two big questions. What are they, and do you anticipate getting answers?
Well, first of all, there's an entire universe of things that you could ask this man, because in a lot of ways, he's the Forrest Gump of the Russia investigation. Think about it. He was at the Department of Justice during this, and he was involved somewhat in the Russia investigation. His wife, Nellie Orr, was at Fusion GPS, and he didn't properly disclose that he was financially benefiting from an active federal matter that, he was involved with. And then finally, he just so happens to be friends with Christopher Steele. So Republicans are going to be chomping at the bit, and there are going to be so many things that they have questions for, and it's going to be up to him to decide whether or not he wants to play ball or plead the fifth.
Okay, let's read a statement here from Mark Meadows, a Republican, who's been really looking into this quite a bit and making a lot of statements about it. Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, worked for the firm hired by the Clinton campaign to write the dossier. Bruce Orr gave the dossier to the FBI. The FBI then used the same dossier to spy on the Trump campaign. When he comes to Congress tomorrow, Bruce Orr has some explaining to do. Now, Orr giving that dossier while he's working at the DOJ, giving that dossier to the FBI, did that move, that seems to be what everybody's focusing on, did that break some sort of a protocol? I mean, is there a punishment for that? What do you expect?
So already Orr has been demoted because Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, found out about some of the activities that he was engaged with without permission. I think what's going to be really interesting here that Orr is going to have to explain is, first, why was he even meeting with Christopher Steele after the FBI decided to end their relationship with him? And then the bigger question here that I think is going to lead to, more explanations that, former Obama officials are going to have to give is, Bruce Orr is going to be pressed on who at the FBI or who at the DOJ or who at the White House knew of his meetings with Christopher Steele and who approved them, or was he simply acting on his own? The goal here is going to be to pull the thread, not necessarily to just stop with Bruce Orr.
Well, right, but realistically, how many answers to these questions do you think we're going to get?
And that's the number one question here. Two things could happen. I'm cynical. I think that Bruce Orr is probably going to say one of two things. Either he's going to plead the fifth on his own, or he's going to do something really similar to what we saw Peter Strzok do in committee, which is kind of turn to the side, talk to his lawyer, and say, well, on the advice of my Department of Justice lawyer, I've decided not to answer that question.
Right. Real quick, I just want to get in that. You read the New York Times today, and they have what almost appears to be a sob story about Bruce Orr here, saying that his fellow colleagues always said he was a straight shooter, that this is all that he really didn't do anything wrong, and it's a piece in the New York Times. So I mean, it bears some reference to at least read and to think about. How do you answer that, I guess?
So what we've seen from the beginning of this entire Russia investigation is we've seen collusion conspiracy theories on the left, and we've seen deep state conspiracy theories on the right. The only thing that is going to restore, I think, confidence in our institutions is more transparency. And I know that this is a closed-door hearing today with Bruce Orr, but it's a step in the right direction. My hope is that this would move the administration, the Trump administration, to declassify a lot of the documents that Congress has already subpoenaed from the DOJ.
Which they can do at any time.
Time will tell. Philip Wegman, thank you for joining us.
All right, today on Capitol Hill, Bruce Orr heading to the hot seat behind closed doors. The DOJ officials set to face the House Oversight Committee to testify about his ties to the anti-Trump dossier, which are indisputable. So what can we expect? Let's ask House Oversight Committee member Congressman Ron DeSantis, who in a matter of moments will tell us how nervous he is and how optimistic he may be about his nomination to represent the Republican Party in the gubernatorial race in Florida. First things first, Congressman, as you are right now, what are you anxious? I know you're not going to be there today because you have behind closed doors. What are you anxious to hear from Bruce Orr?
Well, I want to know his precise role. I mean, we know just from the documents that we have that he was functioning almost as an intermediary between the Clinton campaign and Fusion GPS and the Obama Justice Department. He was one of the highest-ranking officials in Obama's Justice Department, reporting directly to the anti-Trump Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates. So it's really an unprecedented use of official prosecutorial resources to have him that deeply involved in generating this opposition research. We need to know who else at the FBI knew what he was doing. We need to know when he started dealing with people like Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS, what his interactions were with Christopher Steele, and the financial interests that he had in stake, because his wife, Nellie Orr, worked for Fusion GPS, and you're not allowed to be a federal official and participate in matters that you have a financial interest. So I think there's a whole host of questions, but he really is a critical kind of wheel in this whole collusion cog that we've been able to expose over the last few months.
But Ron, he has no business even being in this. He usually does narcotics cases, yet we have 60 known contacts with Christopher Steele, a guy working as a private contractor for his wife's company. Here's an example of some of the texts that we'd like to have him explain. Here's one, Christopher Steele to Bruce Orr. Hi, just wondering if you had any news. Obviously, we're a bit apprehensive given the scheduled appearance at Congress on Monday, hoping that important firewalls will hold. What does that mean? That's the voice in my head. Bruce Orr, sorry, no new news. I believe my earlier information is accurate. I will let you know immediately if there is any change. After Comey was fired, they contact him. After Sally Yates was fired, they contact him. This guy's got a lot of answers. I sense he's not going to give any. But we'll hopefully hear from him. I know Jim Jordan's going to be on our channel later. Today is primary day in Florida. When I talked to you a couple of months ago, you were 20 points behind. Most polls have you 2 points ahead. What is your sense going into Election Day?
Oh, I think we're poised to have a strong victory. I mean, I think all the credible polls that actually poll likely Republican primary voters show us with a really, really strong lead. And it's really been that way, Brian, for the last 2 months. I mean, coming out of the Fox debate at the end of June, every single poll we've taken on our campaign has had me up and up strong. And I think you're going to see a strong victory, but a victory that shows strength in all corners of Florida. We have a big, diverse state, and you got to be able to compete in Miami. You got to be able to compete in Pensacola. And I think I've demonstrated that, and I think the results tonight will reflect that.
Formidable foe in Adam Putnam. You guys have debated. You went at it. And may the best man win. We'll find out today. Thanks so much, Congressman.
Thank you.
Gotta catch 'em all.